job. And I find that as a manager or a supervisor, I don't necessarily have to make that application for them. What I can do is give them some thinking time and some discussion time so that they can find their own applications. And can you see how that ties into that idea of fostering personal responsibility? You know, it's helping them come up with their own answers that I can then, as their manager, validate and say that's right on target. And see, also that's part of ownership. You know, when we're part of the decision process, or when we come up with an idea, we'll defend that idea, we'll apply that idea, we'll make that idea work. Number 5, give recognition, encouragement, and approval. Give recognition, encouragement, and approval. William James, the Harvard psychologist, said the greatest need of every human being is the need for appreciation. Most of us are like dry sponges waiting for a drop of appreciation. People are very quick to point out when we've done something wrong, and generally we don't even need their help. But they'll come along and say, "Do you know what's wrong?" We go, "Yes, I knew that." They say, "Well, I just wanted to be sure." And say, "Well, thanks very much for pointing that out, especially in front of all of these people." You know, and then finally, we do something that is so right, we can hardly believe we've done it ourselves. And so we wait for somebody to say something. And we wait, and we wait, and we wait. And finally, we grab someone and explain to them in full color, in vivid detail, this right thing we've done. And then we're likely to get something like, "Well, isn't that your job? I thought that's what you were paid for. You know, it's about time." You know, and I think sometimes we show appreciation least to the people that we say count the most. I think sometimes we show appreciation least to the people we say count the most. Now, I know that some of us in this room are single, others are married, but probably each of us as an adult has had a significant other in our lives. And it's that person I'd like you to think about. And I'd like you to think about whether or not you've ever had that person say this to you. "Honey, do you love me?" And of course, the reaction is, "Of course I love you. I'm here, aren't I? I mean, I could be someplace else. I'm not." No, we don't say that. We don't say that. It's just, "Of course I love you." That's not the tough question. Tough question's the next one. Why? So we go, "Well, well, you see, it's not that we can't think of anything to say. It's just the things that we can think of don't seem to be important enough to answer that question. I mean, we ought to be talking about climbing mountains, crossing deserts, swimming oceans. But what that person is really saying is, "I need to hear from you that you care. And if you can't say it without my asking, then even though I'd rather not ask, I'll ask, do you love me? And do you care?" You know, it's sort of like the guy that had just gotten married, and he said to his new bride, "Now, honey, I'm not very verbal, so let me just say this. I love you. If it changes, I'll let you know." You know, well, I mean, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. I had an athletic coach in high school who used to yell and scream and shout. And I was doing my absolute best to meet his standards. And finally, one day, to be honest with you, I was 15 years old. I was doing my dead level best, and in front of 60 guys on the athletic field, I broke down and I started crying. And this guy, I was about 5'10" probably at the time. He was 6'4". He came up, and I was playing football. He grabbed the face mask on my football helmet, pulled me up eye level and said, "Pike, as long as I'm yelling, you know I care. When I've stopped, you know I've given up on you." Now, I know that in his mind, he probably thought this was reassuring. You know, but to me, what I wanted to hear is, when I'm doing right, tell me. And it makes it a lot easier to take the criticism when I've missed the mark. The greatest need of every human being is the need for appreciation. Give recognition, give encouragement, and give approval. Number 6 is foster wholesome competition. Foster wholesome competition. Now, what I mean by that is that I compete with me. Success is what I am compared to what I can be. It is me compared with me, and it's you compared with you. And so what I'm doing is I'm looking at what is my standard, and then how do I raise that? Because I think that all too often one of the most destructive things we can do in an organization is have people compete with one another. For example, that's why in my own organizations I have never run a sales contest, but I have run incentive programs. And an incentive program says everybody that meets this standard gets the reward. Versus here's a contest and the top person gets this. Because in my experience, you do a contest like that and everybody already knows one of 2 or 3 people is going to win it. So why try? Because now we've got people competing with one another rather than saying, here are the standards, and everybody that meets that standard gets this kind of recognition, gets this kind of feedback, gets this kind of reward. So foster wholesome competition. Number 7, get excited yourself. Get excited yourself. Now, I don't mean by that when you run a staff meeting, you've got to come running from the back of the room, leap across 4 tables. But I believe that each of us can show an inner enthusiasm regardless of our personal style, and there are 2 ways I think you can show your excitement. Number 1 is as you talk to people, give people eye contact. I mean, have you ever been in a meeting where somebody's talking to you, but all the while they're talking, they're sort of looking around, making sure there isn't somebody else they should be talking to? And you really don't feel all that important, do you? So give people eye contact. And then number 2 is be available. So for example, when I go to meetings, I try to be there 15 minutes early to be able to spend time with people as they come in, regardless of whether it's my meeting that I'm running or a meeting that I'm simply attending. I want to be available. And the same thing, I try to allow 15 minutes after a meeting to just connect with people and be available. Because that demonstrates, I think, at least in my mind, here's someone who's really interested in what they're doing. And not only that, they're interested in me. And don't we perform better for someone that we know is interested in us? Okay, number 8. Establish long-range objectives. And what I mean by this is that as adults, we like to see the big picture. And then we can focus in on our piece and how our piece fits in. So set long-range objectives. Number 9, see the value of internal motives. See the value of internal motives.